Here's what's coming up on The World today. The World Health Organization describes the promise of COVID-19 vaccines as phenomenal and potentially game-changing. As the number of cases rise across the world, the US faces record-high COVID infections and hospitalizations. Plus, Britain under pressure to finalize a post-Brexit trade deal. A warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Teniola Shoboale here in Lagos. We begin with the World Health Organization still extolling research on coronavirus vaccines, the latest being the Pfizer-BioNTech candidate, which will be rolled out in the UK from next week. According to the World Health Organization's regional director for Europe, the promise of COVID-19 vaccines is phenomenal and potentially game-changing. Britain approved Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine yesterday, jumping ahead of the rest of the world in the race to begin the most crucial mass vaccination program in history.
To maximize the first and undoubtedly, the promise of vaccines is phenomenal. The reward is potentially game-changing. With more than 200 candidate COVID-19 vaccines under development, the future looks brighter. With supply expected to be very limited in the initial stage of delivery, all countries must decide who should be vaccinated first to maximize the impact of limited doses in reducing the burden of disease in each country context. Our recommendations are that health and social workers, adults over 60 years of age, and residents and staff of long-term care facilities should be prioritized for access to COVID-19 vaccines in the context of a limited supply.
Well, the vaccine race continues across the world as countries continue to make efforts to acquire what could be a solution to the end of the pandemic. Well, here's more on this and other developments on our COVID-19 Global Update.
A sophisticated network of supply chain infrastructure.
Staying with the vaccines, Chief Executive of the Cold Chain Federation says a fast and effective distribution network is key to the rollout of the recently approved COVID-19 vaccine across the UK. Shane Brennan says the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine will be distributed outside of the traditional cold chain infrastructure due to the extremely low temperatures involved.
A -70 freezer is a small box. You know, you can't create an entire room that's a -70 because people couldn't go in there. They wouldn't be able to work in that environment. The forklift trucks wouldn't work. The pallets would stick to the racking, etc. So it's not that. So effectively, it's a load of sort of smaller chest freezers that they're taking the product out of. They're loading it into small containers, boxes that are packed with dry ice, and then that dry ice, I believe, can give it to 7 to 10 days storage, depending on how much dry ice you use, to then allow it to be essentially air freighted, and it will be air freighted, I imagine, to wherever it's needed in the world, into the UK, at which point those boxes will be relayed to wherever they are needed by the NHS supply chain infrastructure. But what there isn't going to be is mass storage of this product. I mean, partly because the demand is so significant and so immediate, it's as soon as they can use it, it's how quickly can we get it administered. But that doesn't, and again, there's just no economies of scale. That's Amazon courier service on a global scale.
Over in Australia, the pharmaceutical regulator says it is on course to review Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine by January next year, with the country sticking to a March timetable to start vaccinations.
Our COVID-19 situation at the moment I would describe as very stable, with the protections in place to ward against and to deal with any outbreaks as they arise, as we've seen in recent weeks and months. But that said, as we move into the vaccine period, our first priority is that it be safe. It must be safe for Australians, and that's what they would expect of us.
Meanwhile, in Russia, volunteers in the Siberian city of Tyumen on Wednesday received shots of the Russian second coronavirus vaccine, Epivac-Corona, developed by Siberia's Vector Institute. Epivac-Corona was authorized this month to carry out trials on 150 volunteers over 60 and 3,000 volunteers over 18 by the Russian consumer health watchdog. And finally, Brazil's Butantan Institute Biomedical Center says it has received 1 million doses of a Chinese vaccine developed by Sinovac Biotech that is undergoing late-stage testing by the institute in Sao Paulo state. It is the second shipment of the vaccine, which still needs approval from federal health regulator Anvisa before it can be used, to arrive in Brazil after 120,000 doses landed from China on November 19.
Well, let's check in on the United States, which is reporting record high COVID-19 infections and hospitalizations. Recent records show the number of people in hospital passed 100,000 for the first time, doubling what was reported in early November. Nearly 200,000 cases were reported on Wednesday, and the daily death toll rose to nearly 3,000, a new high. There are now nearly 14 million cases of coronavirus reported in the United States, with more than 264,000 deaths. California, Texas, and Florida, the three most populous states, are among the worst affected areas of the country and have each registered more than 1 million cases. There are concerns the numbers will not slow before Christmas. The CDC is urging people to refrain from travel over the holidays. Let's talk to our Washington correspondent now, Maria Bird. Maria, it's great to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. These are concerning figures coming out of the United States. Paint us a picture of what COVID-19 hospitalizations are like currently in most states and how this is affecting people with other illnesses.
This is of great concern. I think many people did not take the heed for the Thanksgiving holiday as the CDC, as the various COVID-19 specialists that have been working with the warp speed and, Dr. Fauci, many of them sounded the alarm and stated that it was going to be vital that Americans begin to refrain from socializing in a large way. And so we're now seeing where hospitals are having to create facilities on the grounds of their hospital, outdoor facilities, to potentially have to add beds. Normally, we would have been able to, back in March and April, we were able to take large cities like New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., that had high cases of coronavirus and send them to smaller cities throughout the country. Now we're seeing our rural areas are also being hit hard, so those hospitals are full to capacity. And so it's requiring that we take on, there have even been gymnasiums considered to become facilities to house the individuals that when the ICU units are over filled to capacity. So the hospitals are extremely concerned. You have doctors asking for individuals to think about them, think about their lives. I think many people have gone beyond just thinking about the everyday American, but think about the doctors that are having to care for individuals in these hospitals. And obviously, it's no way there's enough physicians and enough nurses to address the issue, because it's now gone beyond the very urban environments and the very highly populated areas, but it's now hit our rural communities and our suburban communities very strong.
And Maria, with all that, there is yet a national response to the coronavirus situation in the country. Apart from states where governors are sounding the alarm on protocols to bring down the numbers, how is the United States doing generally when it comes to measures against the pandemic?
Generally, the United States, I think, you have those who are trying to continue life as usual in some way with just following basic guidelines with social distancing and mask wearing. But you have many others that are just overwhelmed and not sure what they should do and how to address this issue. You think about families where children are between virtual school and then they go back in person. So there's no consistency with our educational system. Obviously, many jobs have moved to remote working, but there are many other jobs that require people to go into the office. But you have facilities that will have individuals there, and then they'll have to close down for 7 days once there's been a case. I mean, so it has just wrecked the entire culture of the United States, and not let alone the economy. And as you mentioned, the national response, we all heard President Trump made a response yesterday, seemingly to be upset with Attorney General Barr in regards to the election. So the national response is not there because there's still a focus on election fraud, which we know has been proven by each state or many states that said that no, the votes were accurate and they've been recounted and they have certified those ballots. And so we're less than 50 days away from Inauguration Day. And so it's vital that people begin to move forward because if we don't, we're going to just continue to see cases doubling. As you mentioned, we're heading into another holiday season.
Yeah, and that is very, very worrying, Maria. I remember the warning before Thanksgiving, when people were asked to stay put and celebrate with those in their homes. And we saw a lot of people traveling last week. Christmas is only a few weeks away, and there is yet another warning about traveling for the holidays. Do you think recent figures could deter people, crisscrossing the country and thereby raising the number of infections higher?
I think that's the hope of the CDC and the hope of the coronavirus task force set forth by President-elect Biden. But unfortunately, you have many people that have already set their plans to travel and that have already said that we're willing to take the risk. Now, as you mentioned before, asking about those individuals that have underlying conditions or that have illnesses that are obviously more susceptible to having the coronavirus adversely impact them, where they could be hospitalized or even critically ill, those individuals are likely going to be staying home. So you're going to see the more healthier individuals, those that are a little bit on the younger side, that are going to be traveling and potentially traveling to see their older relatives. So that's why we're seeing long lines of COVID-19 testing during this time of year.
All right, Maria, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed, and do stay safe.
Thank you for having me.
Well, staying with vaccine development, the international vaccine supply chain has been targeted by cyber espionage. That's according to the IBM. The company claims to have tracked a campaign aimed at the delivery cold chain used to keep vaccines at the right temperature during transportation. It also believes this started in September 2020. According to IBM, files and emails were sent out across 6 countries, which targeted organizations linked to the cold chain equipment optimization platform of Gavi, the International Vaccine Alliance. IBM says it has notified those targeted as well as law enforcement authorities. In other news, as talks continue to drag, pressure continues to mount on the UK and EU negotiating teams to finalise a post-Brexit trade deal. Both sides are urgently seeking compromises in key areas before current trading rules expire at the end of December. Since March this year, they have been talking to determine their future relations once the UK's Brexit transition period ends on December 31st. The Irish Foreign Minister, Simon Coveney, is optimistic there is a good chance a deal between the two sides can be reached in the coming days. Well, we'll have more on Brexit with immigration lawyer Mr. Dayo Fadino in just a moment. Plus, it might have been a tough year, but thankfully some things haven't changed. Lighting of the Rockefeller tree for one. Details in a moment. Join us. Thanks for staying with us on The World today. We're still talking Brexit ahead of the December 31st deadline. Pressure is mounting on both sides to reach a deal. We have joining us immigration lawyer, Mr. Dayo Fadino, who joins us to discuss this. Mr. Fadino, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Why do you think the talks have dragged on like this?
The talks have been, dragging on for quite a while now, and I would say I think the main reason being the COVID-19 pandemic situation, where I think many of the European countries are more or less concentrating on how to actually resolve the COVID-19 situation, and not particularly, very into running the negotiations, and this has been going on for well over about 8 months now. But at this point, they need to do something about it, because this is the crunch point where things would have to be done. As of yesterday, there was I read somewhere that they were negotiating all through into the night, early morning, and in fact that they were ordering pizzas for them to at least continue to negotiate all through yesterday night. That's a very, very good sign. But I think 95% of what is to be done is already in place. I think the crunching and different points of view surround the areas of the competition rules, fishing rights, and how this and how the agreement will be governed. If indeed they have a deal, and it could be certified by both the European Parliament and the British Parliament. A problem we may also be having would also have to do with how fast if there's a deal, how fast it could be ratified through the parliaments. Bearing in mind that we only have a few days to Christmas and the New Year, where parliamentarians are going to be going off on a recess. So that could also be another problem.
So I'm guessing, so I'm guessing you're quite optimistic that a deal could be announced this weekend. And just to ask, in whose interest would you say the current state of negotiations?
Well, the current negotiations are in the interests of every person concerned in the UK and every person concerned in the EU. We have businesses that need to be run properly. We need rules and regulations to know what would prevail if we now start trading with each other after the 31st of December. There's also the situation to do with you see, at the end of the day, we need to actually put in place situations where it would not, a deal that would not affect the lives and livelihood of, well over about 450 million people in the EU area, inclusive of the UK. So indeed, it's in the interest of everybody that a deal should be brokered, and it will benefit all concerned.
All right, then. Britain could be going through a Brexit fatigue. There doesn't seem to be an urgency to leave the EU as there once was at the beginning. Do you think this divorce would ever be complete?
Well, first of all, again, I repeat, the reason why there's been a Brexit fatigue is to do with the COVID-19 situation. I think the minds of so many of the UK governments were concentrated on the COVID situation. But apart from that COVID situation, of course, there would have to be a deal, and there would have to be a divorce. As we very well know, even after a divorce situation can never, ever be complete, because you have situations where both parties would have to abide by rules, regulations. They would have to abide by what they've agreed to do. They would have to actually keep to promises after divorce. So indeed, a divorce situation can never, ever be complete. But there will be responsibilities, and privileges and duties that would have to be, abided by all parties concerned.
All right, then, immigration lawyer Mr. Dayo Fadino, thank you so much for sharing with us your thoughts and analysis on the world today.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Moving on now, hundreds of Ethiopian Jews have been airlifted to Israel, the first of several thousand waiting to emigrate there in a long-running saga. Most of their community has lived in transit camps in Ethiopia for years as questions over their eligibility has dogged the process. The migrants are related to Ethiopian Jews brought to Israel decades ago in a series of secret operations. The issue gained greater urgency in recent weeks as fighting between the Ethiopian government and local forces in the Tigray region threatened to spread to Gondar city, where most of the Jews are now housed. Now, for many, lighting of the Christmas tree is the height of the season, and that officially kicked off in New York City on Wednesday with the 88th annual lighting of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree amid new COVID-19 restrictions and soaring virus infection cases. The 2-hour ceremony was broadcast live on NBC with a slew of some virtual star-studded performances, including Dolly Parton and comedian Jimmy Fallon, covering Mariah Carey's classic All I Want for Christmas Is You, Gwen Stefani's singing a new song Here This Christmas, among others, before leading up to the moment where more than 50,000 multicolored LED lights came to life. New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio and Tishman Speyer, CEO Ross Speyer, were on hand to light the 11-ton, 75-foot-tall Norway spruce. Spectators were not allowed at the ceremony, unfortunately, which usually draws hundreds of holiday well-wishers. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, however, ticketed visitors will be able to visit the tree during the holiday season after making reservations for 5-minute viewing windows at designated spots. This year's tree, which will be on display through early January 2021, was donated by Daddy Al's General Store.
What's that? I don't care about the presents underneath the Christmas tree.
I see.
I don't need to hang my stocking there upon the fireplace.
Push my pride aside when I close my eyes. It's just you and I.
Here under the mistletoe,
Magic fills the air, standing over there. Santa, hear my prayer.
here under the mistletoe.
I don't need presents under the tree. I don't need snow and caroling. I don't need a lot of wishes. I just
Well, those were some performances that accompanied the lighting of the tree. And of course, it just shows you that the countdown to Christmas has started. And that's the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.